Chapter 1. At 11:48 p.m., Vanessa Hale received 12 photos of her CEO husband kissing his mistress in the private executive lounge. By 11:51, the entire company had them. She did not scream. She did not call him. She did not throw a glass at the wall or type a paragraph she would regret in the morning. She sat at the kitchen island in her silk robe, looked at the first photo, then the second, then the message beneath them. Hope your quiet wife knows who really keeps him awake. The sender was Livia Stone, 27, glossy, ambitious, and currently wearing Vanessa's anniversary bracelet in photo number 5. Vanessa stared at that bracelet for a long moment. It was not the most expensive piece she owned. It was small, rose gold, set with 3 tiny emeralds. Nathaniel had given it to her 6 years earlier, back when his company had been a struggling software firm running out of rented offices and borrowed confidence. He had said the 3 stones meant past, present, and future. Apparently, future now sat on another woman's wrist while she posed beside him on a leather couch under the Sterling Bridge corporate logo. Vanessa zoomed in. There it was behind them. The silver wall emblem. The restricted bourbon cabinet. The glass conference door with executive lounge printed in frosted letters. Perfect. Livia had not merely sent proof of an affair. She had sent proof of executive misconduct inside a regulated company facility after hours, with alcohol, security access, and stolen personal property. Vanessa set the phone down and took one slow breath. Across the dark kitchen, the city lights reflected against the window. Rain tapped gently at the glass. The house was quiet, expensive, and full of things Nathaniel liked to call ours when investors visited and mine when he was angry. Her phone lit again. Another message from Livia. He says you are too boring to even fight for him. Vanessa smiled then. It was not a happy smile. It was the small, exhausted curve of a woman who had finally received a document formatted by stupidity. She opened Sterling Bridge's internal work chat. The company had operational alerts and urgent cross-team issues. It was called All Hands. Nathaniel hated when people used it casually. He once reprimanded a junior engineer for posting a missing laptop charger there. Vanessa selected all 12 photos. She added one sentence. These appear to involve the CEO, an employee, company premises, after-hours access, alcohol, and personal property taken from my home. Please preserve all related records. Then she tagged legal, HR, security, the board secretary, and the audit committee chair. She pressed send. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the little scene indicators began multiplying like sparks catching dry grass. Vanessa turned off notifications, placed the phone face down, washed her mug, and went upstairs. Nathaniel was not home. His side of the bed was cold, neat, and faintly smelling of the cologne he wore when he wanted other women to notice him before he entered a room. She removed her wedding ring and set it on his pillow. Then she slept for 7 uninterrupted hours. At 6:59 a.m., Nathaniel Cross discovered that his wife did her too. The first person to see the photos was not Nathaniel. It was a night shift site reliability engineer named Owen Price, who had been monitoring a server migration from his apartment while eating cereal from a saucepan. Owen opened All Hands expecting a deployment warning. Instead, he saw his CEO kissing Livia Stone, Director of Strategic Partnerships, beside a bottle of restricted Macallan from the executive lounge. Owen blinked once. Then he took a screenshot, which was unnecessary because legal preservation had already been requested, but human nature remains undefeated at midnight. By 11:54 p.m., 312 employees had seen the post. By midnight, the board secretary had called the general counsel. By 12:07 a.m., security had pulled badge logs. By 12:19 a.m., HR had frozen Livia Stone's access to personnel systems. By 12:31 a.m., the audit committee chair, Margaret Ellis, had forwarded the post to outside counsel with the subject line, immediate preservation, CEO conflict, possible company asset misuse. By 1:03 a.m., Nathaniel's phone began ringing so violently on the executive lounge table that it slid off the edge and hit the carpet. Livia was the one who picked it up. She had fallen asleep on the lounge couch wrapped in his suit jacket, still wearing Vanessa's bracelet. Her makeup had softened around her eyes, and her confidence, without an audience, looked younger than she wanted anyone to know. Nathaniel, she whispered, shaking him. Your phone. Nathaniel groaned, reached blindly, then sat up when he saw the caller. Margaret Ellis. He answered with irritation still in his voice. Margaret, unless the building is on fire, this can wait. There was a pause. Open all hands, Margaret said. Nathaniel's face changed before he even understood why. Men who live by control recognize its absence by smell. He opened the chat. Livia watched his thumb stop moving. Then she watched the blood drain from his face. What? She asked. He did not answer. He scrolled. Once. Twice. 12 photos. Vanessa's sentence. Tags, responses from legal saying preservation hold initiated, security confirming access logs under review, HR stating all involved parties should avoid deleting communications, Margaret posting that the audit committee would convene at 8 a.m. Nathaniel stood so fast the coffee table shifted. You sent these to her? He said. Livia pulled the jacket tighter. I sent them privately. Privately? To Vanessa. His laugh was sharp and ugly. Why? Her face flushed. Because you said you were done hiding. Because you said she knew the marriage was over. Because you said she would never do anything. Nathaniel stared at her as if she had just confessed to setting the building on fire with a candle he handed her. Do you understand what you did? Livia's own anger rose, quick and defensive. Me? You kissed me in your company's executive lounge. You gave me the access card. You opened the bourbon. You put her bracelet on me. Keep your voice down. For who? The whole company has already seen us. The sentence landed like a slap. Nathaniel grabbed his shirt from the chair. Do not contact anyone. Do not post anything. Do not answer calls. What are you going to do? Fix it. That was what Nathaniel always said. Fix it. As if every person, policy, and consequence were a broken object awaiting his hands. He called Vanessa first. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He texted. Take that down now. This is company sabotage. No response. He sent another. Vanessa, answer me. No response. Then, because panic makes arrogant men predictable, he wrote the sentence that would later become Exhibit B. If you think embarrassing me helps your divorce settlement, you have no idea what I can do. Vanessa did not read it until after 3. Vanessa woke at 7 to birdsong, rain, and 146 missed notifications. She made coffee before opening any of them. That mattered. For 12 years, her mornings had been arranged around Nathaniel's urgency. Lost cufflinks, investor calls, forgotten passwords, a speech he needed softened, a journalist he needed charmed, a board packet he needed translated into language that made him sound visionary instead of reckless. Today, coffee came first. She stood barefoot in the kitchen while the machine hissed, watching the city turn silver beneath the morning rain. Her phone rested on the counter like a creature pretending to be dead. At 7:12, she turned it over. There were messages from Nathaniel, Livia, Margaret Ellis, Sterling Bridges' general counsel, the head of security, her personal attorney, and her younger sister Rachel, whose only message read, I woke up to 12 texts asking if you broke the internet. Please say yes. Vanessa laughed softly. It surprised her, that laugh. Not because the night had been funny, but because some part of her had already stepped outside the room where Nathaniel's opinion controlled the temperature. She opened Nathaniel's messages. Take that down now. Vanessa, answer me. If you think embarrassing me helps your divorce settlement, you have no idea what I can do. There it was. Not are you okay? Not I am sorry. Not Livia sent you those because I lied to both of you. A threat. She forwarded the thread to Eleanor Voss, her attorney. Eleanor replied immediately. Good morning. Do not engage. Board call at 8. Eat something with protein. Vanessa rolled her eyes but opened the fridge. At 7:28, Margaret Ellis called. Vanessa answered on speaker while slicing an apple. Good morning, Margaret. The audit chair sounded as if she had slept even less than everyone else. Vanessa, are you safe? The question paused her knife. Most people had asked what happened. Margaret asked whether she was safe. Yes, Vanessa said. Nathaniel did not come home. Security says he remained in the executive lounge until approximately 3:40 a.m., then left through the garage with Ms. Stone. Efficient of him. Margaret did not laugh, but Vanessa heard the faint pause where laughter would have been in another woman. The board is convening at 8, Margaret said. You are invited to join as complainant and interested party. Interested party, Vanessa repeated. Forgive the language. Council chose it. Council always does. Margaret's voice softened. I am sorry. Those 3 words from a woman who had never once sent a holiday card touched Vanessa more than Nathaniel's 12 years of polished anniversary speeches. Thank you, she said. There is one more matter. Your post identified personal property taken from your home. Do you intend to file a police report? Vanessa looked at her bare wrist. The bracelet had been a symbol once, then a wound. Now it was evidence. Not yet, she said. Preserve first, decide after. Understood. After the call, Vanessa went upstairs and dressed for the board meeting. Not armor exactly. She chose a cream blouse, charcoal trousers, and her mother's pearl earrings. No wedding ring. Her hair went into a low twist. Her face looked pale in the mirror, but her eyes were clear. On Nathaniel's pillow, the ring still lay where she had left it. She considered moving it. Then she decided he could find one thing in the house exactly where she placed it. At 7:58, she joined the secure video call. The board members appeared one by one. Margaret Ellis, severe and silver-haired. David Klein, compensation chair, already sweating. Priya Nair, independent director, calm and watchful. Colin Webb, founder's friend, loyal to Nathaniel in the way men are loyal to golf partners and old myths. Nathaniel joined last. He looked tired, furious, and immaculately dressed from the chest up. His eyes found Vanessa's box on the screen. Take her off the call, he said. No greeting, no apology. Vanessa sipped her coffee. Margaret's voice was flat. The call has begun. Nathaniel leaned toward his camera. This is a marital issue. Vanessa placed her mug down. After 4. The board call lasted 11 minutes before Nathaniel made his first irreversible mistake. He had entered prepared to minimize. Vanessa could see it in the set of his jaw, the careful angle of his shoulders, the CEO voice warming beneath his anger. He had survived product failures, hostile investors, and regulatory audits by converting danger into narrative. Narrative had been his favorite weapon. The images were obtained and distributed without context, he said. My wife is upset, understandably, but Ellis looked down at a document. The images appear to show you and Ms. Stone in a restricted corporate space after hours with alcohol and personal property alleged to belong to Mrs. Cross. Vanessa, Nathaniel said sharply, is not an employee. Priya Nair leaned forward. She is the spouse of the CEO and the reporting party regarding alleged misuse of company premises. Reporting party? Nathaniel snapped. She posted intimate photos to the entire company. Vanessa's voice stayed even. Livia sent them to me. I forwarded them to the people responsible for legal preservation. If you preferred privacy, you had several opportunities before photo number 1. Colin Webb cleared his throat. Perhaps we can separate personal misconduct from corporate impact. Vanessa had expected Colin. Men like him were not necessarily villains. They were worse in boardrooms, comfortable. They protected the version of power that had always invited them to dinner. Margaret did not look at him. We will separate them if evidence allows. At present, the setting, personnel relationship, badge access, alcohol, and potential asset misuse create corporate impact. Nathaniel's laugh had no humor. Asset misuse? It was a lounge. The general counsel, Simon Hart, spoke for the first time. The executive lounge is used for regulated client meetings. Access is logged. Alcohol inventory is maintained for approved events. Badge sharing or unauthorized access creates compliance concerns. Livia appeared on the call then, late and pale, her blonde hair pulled back too tightly. She wore a black blazer and no bracelet. Nathaniel's face tightened. Who invited her? Simon answered. HR. Livia looked smaller in the grid than she had in the photos. Still beautiful, but no longer shining with stolen certainty. Margaret addressed her. Miss Stone, were you authorized to access the executive lounge last night? Livia's eyes flicked to Nathaniel. He shook his head once. Everyone saw it. Vanessa almost admired the efficiency with which he destroyed himself. Margaret's voice cooled. Mr. Cross, do not signal witnesses. Nathaniel froze. Livia swallowed. Nathaniel gave me his secondary access card. Simon Hart closed his eyes briefly. Priya wrote something down. Colin looked as if he had been asked to swallow a live coal. Nathaniel spoke through his teeth. That is not accurate. Livia's face changed. Fear first, then insult. Then the dawning realization that being chosen had a short warranty. You gave it to me in the elevator, she said. You said security never checks your logs. Vanessa saw Simon Hart type very fast. Nathaniel turned toward his own camera. This is absurd. She is embarrassed and trying to protect herself. Livia stared at him. There, Vanessa thought. There it is. Not justice, not yet, but the moment a mistress discovers the man who used her to wound his wife will use her again to protect himself. Margaret lifted a hand. Enough. The audit committee will initiate an independent investigation. Mr. Cross, pending review, you are instructed not to contact Miss Stone or Mrs. Cross regarding this matter, not to delete communications, and not to access any records related to security, HR, or lounge logs. Nathaniel's face darkened. You do not instruct me on access in my company. Vanessa looked at him then. His company. The phrase had built their marriage like a wall. His company when he wanted authority. Our sacrifice when he wanted her unpaid labor. Their future when he needed her family contacts. His company again when credit arrived. Margaret did not flinch. This board has fiduciary duties. This board exists because I built Sterling Bridge from nothing, Nathaniel said. Vanessa spoke softly. No, you did not. The call went still. Nathaniel's eyes snapped to her. What did you say? Vanessa leaned back, hands folded in her lap. I said you did not build it from nothing. Colin gave an awkward cough. Vanessa, perhaps this is not the time. It is exactly the time, Margaret said. Vanessa looked from box to box on the screen. 12 years ago, Sterling Bridge was 3 months from insolvency. Nathaniel's bank line was dead. The first institutional bridge came through Astor Ridge Capital. The second growth round came through the Northlake Strategic Vehicle. The acquisition financing came through Ellison Harbor Partners. All three were introduced through my family office. Nathaniel's expression shifted from anger to warning. Vanessa, he said. She did not stop. I never sat on this board because I did not want my marriage to become a governance issue. I never used my voting rights because I believed Nathaniel deserved room to lead. But do not let him tell you he built the company from nothing. Margaret's eyes sharpened. Voting rights? Nathaniel went pale. Vanessa smiled faintly. Simon, she said, perhaps you should open. Hart did not want to open the Series C side letter. His face made that painfully clear. He was a careful lawyer, not a brave one, and the difference often appeared only when powerful men started bleeding in public. Still, he knew where documents lived. That was the curse and dignity of legal departments. He requested a 3-minute pause. Nobody moved from the call. Vanessa watched Nathaniel during those 3 minutes. He looked at her not like a husband, not like a man caught cheating, but like an executive watching a hidden liability emerge on a balance sheet. That was almost freeing. It meant she no longer had to search his face for love. Simon returned. I have the side letter, Margaret said. Summarize. Simon cleared his throat. The Series C financing includes a governance side letter granting protective voting rights to Renhold Trust through its designated beneficial representative under certain trigger events. Priya Nair looked up. Trigger events? CEO incapacity, fraud investigation, material misconduct involving misuse of company resources, or executive action creating significant reputational or regulatory risk. The silence that followed had texture. Colin's mouth opened slightly. David Klein looked at Nathaniel with new horror. Margaret's expression did not change, but her stillness sharpened into satisfaction. Nathaniel spoke first. Renhold Trust is passive. Simon did not answer. Margaret looked at Vanessa. Are you the designated representative? Vanessa set her coffee aside. Yes. Livia made a small sound. Not quite gasp, not quite laugh. The sound of a woman realizing she had sent victory photos to the person who owned the scoreboard. Nathaniel leaned toward the camera. This is ridiculous. Vanessa has no operational role. Protective voting rights are not operational, Priya said. They are governance rights. He glared at her. Do not lecture me on my own cap table. Vanessa tilted her head. You may want to learn it first. Margaret intervened before he could explode. Under the side letter, can Renhold call for temporary governance measures? Simon looked as if he had swallowed a nail. Under a qualifying trigger, yes. Has a qualifying trigger occurred? That is subject to board determination. Eleanor Voss joined the call then, her video appearing beside Vanessa's. She was 62, elegant, and feared by 3 separate federal judges for reasons Vanessa admired but never asked about. Good morning, Eleanor said. Renhold Trust is submitting formal notice preserving its position that a qualifying trigger has occurred. Nathaniel slammed his palm on his desk. The microphone caught it as a crack. You planned this, he said. Vanessa looked at him. Livia sent the photos at 11:48. You were waiting. No, I was sleeping by midnight. That sentence moved through the call like a match near gas. Livia stared at her screen. Margaret pressed her lips together. Priya looked down, possibly to hide a smile. Colin's face had gone from protective to uncertain, which in his case counted as a personality transformation. Eleanor continued. Renhold requests immediate preservation of all records related to Miss Stone's access, compensation, travel, expense approvals, client entertainment allocations, and any communications involving Mr. Cross's attempt to influence witness testimony. Renhold further requests that Mr. Cross be placed on administrative leave from matters touching the investigation. Denied, Nathaniel said. Margaret looked at him. You do not have unilateral authority to deny. I am CEO. You are the subject of the investigation. He turned to Vanessa again. You would damage the company to punish me? There it was, the line every exposed man eventually found. If you hold me accountable, you are the destructive one. Vanessa's voice remained calm. The company was damaged when its CEO turned a restricted executive facility into a private stage for an affair, gave an employee unauthorized access, allowed personal property taken from his home to appear in company premises, and then threatened the reporting party in writing. Nathaniel's face flushed. Livia whispered, You threatened her? He did not look at her. That answer did more than any confession. Margaret called for a vote. Administrative leave pending investigation. Preservation measures. Temporary board oversight of CEO access. Independent counsel. Renhold trigger review. Colin hesitated. Vanessa watched him. He looked at Nathaniel, then at Margaret, then at the legal document. Rose. All in favor. Nathaniel sat very still. Vanessa did not feel triumphant. Not yet. Triumph required a cleaner room. This was only the first window opening after years of stale air. Margaret concluded, Mr. Cross, your access to internal systems will be limited by noon. You will receive written instructions. Nathaniel's smile returned, thin and dangerous. You will all regret this. Vanessa lifted her ringless hand to end the call. Maybe, she said. Chapter 6 Sterling Bridge had always run on two things, clean code and dirty silence. The company sold compliance software to hospitals, insurers, and financial institutions. Its products tracked data access, flagged suspicious patterns, and generated audit trails so precise that clients joked the software remembered sins before people committed them. Inside the company, however, Nathaniel had built an exception around himself. His badge could open restricted floors. His expenses were reviewed after approval, not before. His calendar could be edited by 3 assistants. His personal requests became urgent operational priorities because nobody wanted to be the person who slowed the founder CEO. By noon on the day after Vanessa's post, all of that became evidence. Security pulled logs showing Livia had entered the executive lounge 9 times in 2 months using Nathaniel's secondary card. Finance found luxury travel coded under strategic partnership development. HR found no disclosure of a personal relationship between the CEO and a direct business counterpart. Facilities found after-hours cleaning requests for the lounge on dates matching Livia's social media posts. By 2 p.m., someone discovered that Livia had received a retention bonus approved outside the normal cycle. By 3:15, the bonus was linked to a project that did not exist. At 4, the entire executive floor learned that the quiet wife who used to bring lemon cakes to product launches was the beneficial representative of a trust with veto rights over major governance triggers. People began rewriting memories. Vanessa had not been decorative at holiday parties. She had been listening. Vanessa had not been shy during investor dinners. She had been letting Nathaniel speak. Vanessa had not lacked ambition. She had placed it somewhere Nathaniel could not spend it. At 4:30, Livia called Vanessa. Eleanor advised against answering. Vanessa answered anyway, recorded line enabled. Livia sounded ragged. I did not know about Renhold. Most people do not. Nathaniel said you had family money but no involvement. He said many things. A silence opened between them. Then Livia said, HR froze my laptop. Security wants my phone. My lawyer says I need to preserve messages. Nathaniel is not answering me. Vanessa looked out her office window at the rain-slick street below. That sounds consistent. I know you hate me. I do not know you well enough to hate you. The sentence was not kind. It was accurate, which sometimes hurt more. Livia inhaled shakily. I sent those photos because I wanted you to feel small. Vanessa said nothing. He told me you looked down on him, that you made him feel like an employee in his own life, that you liked being the calm, rich wife while he did all the work. Vanessa smiled faintly, without humor. Nathaniel had always hated what he needed: money, patience, advice, introductions, her, and you believed him. I wanted to, Livia said. It made me feel like I was rescuing him from you instead of helping him betray you. That was more honesty than Vanessa expected. Why are you calling? She asked. Because he told me to delete our old messages 2 weeks ago. I did not. I thought they were romantic. Livia gave a broken laugh. They are not romantic. Vanessa's hand stilled around the phone. Do not send them to me, she said. Send them to your attorney. Your attorney can coordinate with independent counsel. You are helping me? No. I am preventing Nathaniel from turning you into a trash bin and calling it cleanup. Livia was quiet. Vanessa, she said at last, the bracelet is with security. I took it off before I left the lounge. Good. I knew it was yours. There it was, the cruelty beneath the confession. Vanessa closed her eyes. I know, she said. I am sorry. Vanessa opened her eyes again. Across the street, people hurried beneath umbrellas, unaware that inside one townhouse, a marriage was being converted into records. Be sorry enough to tell the truth, she said. Then leave me out of your need to be forgiven. She ended the call. That night, Nathaniel did come home. Vanessa heard his key in the lock at 9:22 p.m. She was in the library with Eleanor, reviewing the preliminary separation plan. Marcus Vale, her private security lead, stood in the hall. Nathaniel paused when he saw him. Who the hell is this? Vanessa did not stand. Marcus. I know his name because you just used it. Why is he in my house? Our house, Vanessa said. Legally mine through Whitmore Residential Trust, but I am trying to be conversational. Eleanor looked down at her notes. Marcus's mouth did not move, but Vanessa suspected he enjoyed the sentence. Nathaniel stepped into the library. His suit was wrinkled, his tie gone, his eyes bright with fury and exhaustion. For the first time in years, he looked like the man from the early days of Stirling Bridge. Hungry, cornered, dangerous because he had not yet learned to conceal panic elegantly. You locked me out of my systems. The board did. Because of you. Because of what you did. He pointed toward her phone. You could have called me. Vanessa almost laughed. After receiving photos from your mistress wearing my bracelet in your executive lounge? You could have handled it privately. You keep saying private as if it means consequence-free. His face hardened. You have always waited for a chance to prove you were above me. That one landed closer than the others. Not because it was true, but because it revealed how long he had been fighting an imaginary version of her. Vanessa stood slowly. I spent 12 years making sure no room saw how often I carried you. Carried me? Investor dinners, regulatory briefings, your first enterprise contract, the hospital consortium introduction, the apology letter to the employee you humiliated after the Austin demo failed, the board memo after you almost lost the North Lake round, the speech after my father died, when you were too busy taking calls to remember his name in the first draft. Nathaniel's eyes flickered. Good. He remembered. I did not carry you because I thought you were beneath me, she said. I carried you because I loved you, and because I believed building something together meant sometimes holding the beam while the other person stood in the light. For a moment, silence. Then he said, And now? Vanessa looked at him with the quiet she had once used to protect him. Now I am putting the beam. Did not leave quietly. He moved through the library like a storm with nowhere to land, opening his mouth, closing it, adjusting the cuffs of a shirt already wrinkled beyond saving. His gaze kept returning to Eleanor, then Marcus, as if witnesses were a personal insult. I want to speak to my wife alone, he said. Vanessa answered before Eleanor could. No. You are afraid of me now? I am aware of you. The distinction angered him. Fear he could understand. Awareness gave him nothing to fight. He turned toward Eleanor. This is still my home. Eleanor removed a document from her folder. Whitmore Residential Trust purchased the property 8 years before the marriage. You signed a postnuptial acknowledgement in 2016 after refinancing discussions. I signed a stack of estate papers because Vanessa told me to. That is an unfortunate description of informed consent. Nathaniel glared at her. You people have been waiting. Vanessa leaned one hand against the desk. The day was catching up with her now. Her body felt heavy, not weak, but deeply used. Betrayal consumes calories in ways no doctor warns you about. No one waited for you to bring Livia into the executive lounge, she said. No one waited for you to put my bracelet on her wrist. No one waited for you to threaten me in writing. That was all your initiative. His jaw clenched. What do you want? It was the same question he asked vendors after cornering them. The tone implied everyone had a price, even pain. A clean separation, Vanessa said. Full preservation. No contact with Livia. No retaliation against employees who cooperate. Return of personal property. Board process without interference. A truthful, private statement for the record. And my company? Your role will depend on the investigation. Do not insult me. What are you taking? There it was. The only vocabulary left when love had been converted into ownership. Vanessa studied him. He looked at her with resentment so old it seemed almost independent of last night's events. Had he resented her money from the beginning, or only after he needed it? Had every gift become a debt in his mind, every kindness a humiliation waiting for revenge? I am not taking Sterling Bridge, she said. I am preventing you from using it as a shield. You expect me to believe that? No. I stopped expecting you to understand motives you cannot use. He stepped toward her. Marcus moved instantly. Nathaniel stopped, eyes flashing. This is insane. Vanessa's phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Margaret. Emergency board update at 8 a.m. Independent counsel received materials from Ms. Stone. Vanessa did not open it fully. Nathaniel saw enough. She sent them? He asked. Vanessa looked up. Apparently, for the first time that night, real fear crossed his face. Not anger, not wounded pride, fear. It confirmed what Vanessa had suspected. The photos were bad. The access logs were worse. But the messages would show intent. Nathaniel reached for his phone. Eleanor's voice cut cleanly through the room. If you contact Miss Stone after board instruction not to, that fact will be included in tomorrow's report. His hand froze. He looked at Vanessa. You turned her against me. No, Vanessa said. You turned too quickly. The sentence struck him. He hit it badly. For 1 second, something like grief moved beneath his rage. Vanessa saw the man she had loved, or perhaps the boy he had once been, before ambition taught him to call shame by other names. I did love you, he said. She did not answer immediately. That was the cruelest sentence of the day because it might have been true. Maybe, she said at last. But you loved being admired more. When I stopped admiring blindly, you went looking for someone who would confuse access with intimacy. He flinched. Livia is not the reason we are ending, Vanessa continued. She is the mirror you held up because you thought it would hurt me. It did. But it also showed me what you had become. Nathaniel's eyes lowered to her ringless hand. Where is it? On your pillow. Why? Because that is where your marriage was sleeping when Livia texted me. For once, he had no answer. Eleanor stood. Mr. Cross, you may collect personal clothing under supervision. You should stay elsewhere until temporary terms are agreed. You are evicting me. I am asking you to leave a house you do not own after a documented threat, Vanessa said. Choose the cleaner sentence. Nathaniel looked around the library, the shelves, the old desk, the framed photograph of their first product launch. So many objects had witnessed a life that now seemed to belong to people who no longer existed. He left with one suitcase and the wedding ring in his coat pocket. Vanessa watched from the upstairs landing as Marcus closed the door behind him. Only then did she sit on the stairs and cry. Eleanor sat beside her without speaking. After a while, Vanessa wiped her face and laughed through one broken breath. I really did sleep. Eleanor patted her hand. A strategic masterpiece. Bridge employees logged into a company that felt as if someone had removed the ceiling. Legal posted a preservation reminder. HR opened a confidential reporting line. Margaret Ellis announced that an independent investigation had begun and that Nathaniel Cross was on administrative leave pending review. The message used careful language. No speculation, no conclusions, no gossip. The employees supplied all three privately. People remembered things. Livia leaving the executive floor at odd hours. Nathaniel's assistant booking last-minute hotels. The sudden promotion Livia received after a client dinner where she had no speaking role. The way Vanessa used to sit in the back row at company town halls while Nathaniel thanked the board, investors, product, engineering, and occasionally, my family, without turning toward her. By noon, independent counsel had received 27 voluntary statements. One came from Nathaniel's former chief of staff, Anika Moore. Anika had resigned 6 months earlier after what the company called burnout and what she privately called refusing to launder Nathaniel's life through her calendar. Her statement included travel records, handwritten notes, and an email in which Nathaniel instructed her to list Livia as client-facing strategic support for a retreat she never attended during work hours. Another came from a facilities manager who had kept duplicate lounge cleaning requests because Nathaniel often asked for no ticket, just handle it. A third came from a junior finance analyst who had questioned Livia's retention bonus and been told by Nathaniel's office that strategic personnel decisions were above her pay grade. Evidence has a sound when it gathers. Not loud. More like rain filling a metal bucket, drop by drop, until no one can pretend the floor is dry. Vanessa spent the day in Renhold's office downtown, reviewing updates with Eleanor and Margaret. The office occupied the top floor of an old stone building with no logo in the lobby. Nathaniel had been there twice during their marriage and called it your family's museum with spreadsheets. He had not noticed that the museum held voting rights in 3 of his largest investors. At 3 p.m., Margaret placed a printed timeline on the table. This is no longer only about the lounge, she said. Vanessa looked at the entries. Expense irregularities, access violations, witness signaling, potential retaliation, undisclosed relationship, retroactive project documentation beginning that morning. He is creating documents now? Vanessa asked. Eleanor's expression turned almost serene, which meant someone had done something stupid enough to be useful. At 10:42 a.m., Nathaniel sent a draft memo to his personal email describing Ms. Stone's work as essential to a confidential acquisition project. Metadata shows the memo was created today. Margaret rubbed her temple. The man runs a compliance software company. Irony is rarely gentle, Eleanor said. Vanessa leaned back. The strangest part was how unsurprised she felt. Nathaniel believed speed could become truth if delivered confidently enough. He had built decks that way. Apologies, explanations, entire quarters of strategy. What happens next? Vanessa asked. Margaret folded her hands. The board can extend administrative leave, appoint an interim CEO, and consider cause removal depending on the independent report. Renhold can exercise protective rights if the trigger is confirmed. And employees? Operations remain stable. Product leadership is functioning. Clients have not been notified beyond standard continuity language. Good, Vanessa said. Margaret studied her. You are worried about employees? Nathaniel will accuse me of destroying the company. I would prefer not to help him make that lie attractive. For the first time, Margaret smiled fully. Your father would have liked you. Vanessa's throat tightened. Her father, Edward Whitmore, had died 3 years earlier. He had never trusted Nathaniel. He had not been rude about it. That was not his style. He simply asked Nathaniel precise questions and watched him answer the person he wished were listening instead of the person who asked. After the wedding, Edward had created Renhold's protective structure quietly. Not because I expect him to fail you, he told Vanessa, but because love should not require you to be legally helpless. She had been offended then. Now the memory felt like a hand reaching forward through time. At 5:30, Rachel arrived with 2 coffees and the expression of a younger sister prepared to fight a nation. I saw the photos, Rachel said, hugging Vanessa hard. I am going to say one cruel thing and then be supportive. Only one? For now. Livia poses like a perfume ad for poor judgment. Vanessa laughed despite herself. Rachel pulled back, eyes wet. Are you okay? There it was again, the question beneath the spectacle. Vanessa looked at the timeline, the legal pads, the rain beyond the windows. Not yet, she said, but I am no longer confused. Rachel nodded. That is a start. It was more than a start. For years, confusion had been Nathaniel's most effective architecture. He made her question whether she was too sensitive, too quiet, too privileged, too cold, too unwilling to understand the pressures of greatness. The photos had ended confusion. Cruelty, when documented clearly enough, can become a kind of mercy. It appeared at 7:06 p.m. It was posted to his personal account, then deleted within 4 minutes, then captured by every person who understood that deleted statements are often the most honest kind. Private pain should never be exploited through workplace systems. I am disappointed that a marital matter was broadcast to employees who deserve better than to be used as leverage. Vanessa read it at Eleanor's office. Rachel made a noise of disgust. He turned cheating into an employee wellness issue. Eleanor was already forwarding the statement to independent counsel. And violent. Margaret called within 2 minutes. Did you see it? Yes, Vanessa said. The board is moving tonight. By 9, an emergency meeting was underway. Nathaniel joined from a hotel suite, jaw tight, background carefully neutral. His attorney sat beside him. Livia did not appear. Her attorney had already delivered a packet of messages to independent counsel and informed the board that Ms. Stone, board chair, a retired hospital executive named Evelyn Grant, presided this time. Evelyn had once survived a hostile merger, a Senate inquiry, and pancreatic surgery. She treated Nathaniel's ego like a scheduling issue. Mr. Cross, she said, did you post a public statement after receiving written instruction not to discuss the matter publicly? Nathaniel's attorney answered, the post was a personal expression made in an emotional moment and promptly removed. Evelyn looked at Nathaniel. My question was to Mr. Cross. Nathaniel's face tightened. Yes. Did you consult company counsel? No. Did you consider whether describing a preservation report as leverage could intimidate employee witnesses? That was not my intention. Intention is noted. Impact is under review. Vanessa watched from Renhold's conference room. She had not planned to speak. Eleanor advised silence unless asked. Silence, when chosen, was becoming a surprisingly useful instrument. Then Colin Webb spoke. We are still dealing with a founder who made personal mistakes. I worry we are allowing this to become a coup. There it was again, the old room defending itself. Vanessa looked at Margaret. Margaret gave the smallest nod. Vanessa unmuted. Colin, may I ask you something? He looked uncomfortable. Of course. If a non-founder executive gave an employee unauthorized access to a restricted facility, failed to disclose a relationship, misclassified expenses, attempted to influence that employee's testimony, threatened the report, did you call the investigation a coup? Colin's face reddened. That is a loaded framing. It is a documented sequence. Nathaniel laughed bitterly. You have been waiting to say that. Vanessa turned to him on screen. No. I have been waiting for you to stop making it true. Evelyn Grant intervened. The question before the board is whether administrative leave and access restrictions remain sufficient. Simon Hart presented the latest findings. Livia's messages showed Nathaniel had described the executive lounge as safer than hotels because I own the building. He had told her Vanessa would never risk looking messy. He had instructed her not to message his company phone after 7 p.m. because Vanessa sometimes reviewed his calendar. He had written 3 weeks earlier, once the Series D closes, I will handle the marriage. That last line made Vanessa's fingers go cold. Handle the marriage. Not end. Not discuss. Handle. Eleanor slid a glass of water toward her. Then came the message about the bracelet. Livia, are you sure she will not notice? Nathaniel, she notices everything. She just swallows it. The room changed. Vanessa felt the sentence enter her body like ice water. There are humiliations that hurt because they are false. This one hurt because he had understood her endurance and chosen to exploit it. Rachel, sitting beside her, whispered, Vanessa. Vanessa lifted one hand to show she was steady. On screen, Nathaniel looked at the table. Evelyn Grant's voice was quiet. Mr. Cross, did you write this? His attorney leaned toward him. Nathaniel nodded once. Yes. Do you have context to add? He looked up then, and for the first time since the photos, he seemed less angry than exposed. No, he said. The board voted to suspend him from all executive duties pending final investigation. Grant Mercer, Sterling Bridge's chief operating officer, would serve as interim CEO. Renhold's protective rights would be formally recognized during the investigation period. Nathaniel would not access company premises without written permission. Colin abstained. Everyone else voted yes. After the call, Vanessa remained seated. Rachel squeezed her hand. That message was evil. Vanessa looked at the dark screen where Nathaniel's face had been. No, she said slowly. It was useful. Rachel stared. Useful? It reminded me he knew I was hurting. That was the worst truth and the cleanest one. Nathaniel had not been blind. He had been counting on her silence. Now that silence was there. Livia Stone walked into Renhold's office wearing no makeup, a gray coat, and fear she could not style. She came with her attorney, a practical woman named Nora Bell who carried one folder and looked allergic to theatrics. Vanessa agreed to the meeting only because independent counsel requested a narrow clarification about personal property. Eleanor sat beside Vanessa. Marcus stood outside the glass door. Livia did not look like the woman from the photos. In the photos, she had been all angles and shine, chin lifted, smile sharpened by triumph. In the office, she looked young. Not innocent, never that, but young in the way people look when consequences strip away the lighting. Thank you for meeting me, Livia said. Vanessa said, this is for the record. Livia nodded quickly. I understand. Nora opened the folder. My client has prepared a statement regarding the bracelet, access card, and communications. She will provide it to independent counsel. She also wanted to communicate something directly, if permitted. Eleanor looked at Vanessa. Vanessa nodded once. Livia folded her hands so tightly her knuckles whitened. Nathaniel told me the bracelet was a gift you did not wear anymore, she said. That is not an excuse. I knew it was yours. I knew wearing it in the photos would hurt you. That was why I did it. Vanessa appreciated the absence of decoration. It did not make the confession easier, but it made it less insulting. Why? She asked. Livia's eyes glistened. Because I thought if I could make you react, I would prove he was right about you. Which part? That you were cold. That you did not love him. That you only cared about control. Livia looked down. If you exploded, he could say you were unstable. If you stayed quiet, I could say you did not care. I had a version ready either way. Vanessa sat back. It was strange, hearing the architecture of a trap after she had already walked out of it. It should have made her angrier. Instead, it made Livia seem smaller, less like a rival, and more like an unpaid intern in Nathaniel's private mythology. And the work chat? Vanessa asked. Livia swallowed. I did not expect that. No one did. Eleanor's mouth twitched. Nora Bell looked respectfully at the table. Livia continued. When I saw it, I thought you were cruel. Then Nathaniel told me to say I had taken his card without permission. He said if I cared about him, I would protect the company. That was when I understood he had a script for everyone. Vanessa's fingers rested on the folder before her. You still chose to help write mine. I know. You understand that cooperation does not erase that. Yes. Livia's voice cracked on the word, but she did not cry. Vanessa respected that. Tears can be honest, but they can also become a demand. Livia, for once, demanded nothing. Nora handed over an inventory receipt. The bracelet is in security custody. My client waives any claim and acknowledges it was not gifted with lawful authority. Eleanor reviewed it. Good. The meeting could have ended there. Instead, Livia looked at Vanessa and said, he kept saying you slept after sending the photos. I think it scared him more than yelling would have. Vanessa almost smiled. It should have. Why did you? The question held genuine confusion. Vanessa considered it. She could have said exhaustion. She could have said strategy. Both were true. But the deeper truth had become clearer over the last 3 days. Because I had spent years losing sleep over things Nathaniel did while he slept peacefully, she said. That night, I decided the consequences could stay awake without me. Livia looked at her for a long time. I wish I had known women could be like you, she said quietly. Vanessa did not soften. You did know. You just chose to see me through his contempt. Livia accepted the correction with a small nod. After she left, Eleanor closed the folder. You were fair. Was I? Fair is not warm. People confuse that. Vanessa looked toward the elevator where Livia had disappeared. I do not forgive her. No one asked you to. She did not ask either. That is probably why the meeting was bearable. Vanessa stood and walked to the window. Below, the city moved in clean winter light. Somewhere inside it, Nathaniel was learning how much quieter the world became when people stopped answering immediately. Her phone buzzed. Nathaniel. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. Vanessa let it ring until it stopped. Then a message arrived. I need to talk to you. Not lawyers. Us. Vanessa forwarded it to Eleanor. Eleanor replied aloud, no. Chapter 11, Nathaniel requested mediation. Not divorce mediation, not yet. Crisis mediation, his attorney called it, as if the crisis were a weather event rather than a sequence of choices with timestamps. He wanted a private meeting with Vanessa, representatives from the board, Renhold, and independent counsel. His stated purpose was to reduce damage to Sterling Bridge and avoid unnecessary escalation. Eleanor translated in 2 words. He panicked. The meeting was scheduled in a neutral conference center with ugly carpet and excellent recording equipment. Vanessa arrived with Eleanor. Nathaniel arrived with 2 attorneys and no wedding ring. The absence hit her unexpectedly. She had removed hers first, left it on his pillow like a period at the end of a sentence, but seeing his hand bare still felt like finding a room emptied before she had finished saying goodbye. He looked thinner. Not dramatically. Enough. For once, he stood when she entered. Vanessa, he said. She nodded and took her seat. The mediator, a former judge named Harold Pierce, began with rules. Confidentiality, respect, no interruptions, no threats, no direct contact outside of a man accustomed to setting rules, not receiving them. Margaret Ellis joined by video. Simon Hart appeared from the company office. Independent counsel's lead investigator, Alicia Rowe, sat at the far end of the table with a laptop open and a face carved from procedural granite. Judge Pierce asked Nathaniel to begin. Nathaniel placed both hands on the table. I want to acknowledge that I made serious mistakes. Vanessa watched his face. He continued, my relationship with Livia was inappropriate. Bringing her into company spaces was inappropriate. The photos were humiliating to Vanessa and disruptive to the company. I should not have threatened her. Eleanor wrote something down. Vanessa did not move. Nathaniel looked at her then. I am sorry. The words entered the room and sat there, smaller than he probably hoped. Judge Pierce turned to Vanessa. Would you like to respond? Not yet. Nathaniel's jaw flexed. The mediator nodded. Proceed. Nathaniel's attorney outlined a proposal. Nathaniel would remain on leave for 30 days, complete executive coaching, issue a revised internal apology, reimburse questionable expenses, and return gradually under board supervision. In exchange, Renhold would agree not to invoke further protective measures, Vanessa would refrain from additional internal communications, and all parties would keep the matter confidential. Vanessa looked at Margaret's video box. Margaret's expression said exactly what Eleanor whispered. Absolutely not. Judge Pierce asked Vanessa's side to respond. Eleanor slid a document across the table. Renhold's position is that any return discussion is premature before final findings. At minimum, Mr. Cross must remain suspended from executive authority, preserve records, reimburse verified expenses, waive retaliation claims against cooperating employees, and submit to the board's cause determination. Mrs. Cross's marital claims are separate and not available as corporate bargaining chips. Coot. Nathaniel looked at Vanessa. So you are pushing me out, she finally spoke. You still think the consequence is the injury. He frowned. What does that mean? You keep describing your suspension as harm. The harm was what made suspension necessary. Judge Pierce watched them carefully. Nathaniel leaned forward. I built Sterling Bridge. With help. I know that now. Vanessa nearly closed her eyes. The now was a confession wrapped in self-pity. Do you? She asked. His expression tightened. Name it, she said. Not in general. Name what helped you. One of his attorneys shifted, but Judge Pierce lifted a hand. Let him answer. Nathaniel looked at the table. Your family office introduced the first bridge. And? Northlake? And? Ellison Harbor? And? He looked up, irritated. What do you want me to say? Vanessa's voice remained quiet. The hospital consortium. The investor dinner after Austin. The regulatory council after the first privacy complaint. The foundation contacts that made the public sector contracts possible. The board packet I rewrote the night before Series B because yours sounded like a manifesto. Alicia Rowe's typing became very fast. Nathaniel's face reddened. You want public credit? No. I wanted private respect. That finally silenced him. Not for long, but long enough. Vanessa continued. You resented every door I opened because walking through it made you feel less self-made. So you rewrote me as a decorative wife. Then you found Livia and let her wear my bracelet because hurting me privately was no longer enough. You needed proof you could give pieces of my life away. Nathaniel's eyes flickered. That is not why. Then why? He opened his mouth. Nothing came. Judge Pierce let the silence stretch until it became an answer. The mediation ended without settlement. Nathaniel's side called it unproductive. Eleanor called it educational. Margaret called a board meeting for the following week. In the hallway, Nathaniel caught up to Vanessa before Marcus could step between them. I did resent you, he said. She stopped. His voice was low, stripped down. Not all the time, not at first, but yes. I hated needing what you could give without effort. Vanessa felt the confession strike a place already bruised. It was not without effort, she said. You just did not count mine. He looked away. That, Vanessa said, is. The final investigation report arrived on a Monday morning, 480 pages long. Vanessa printed none of it. She had no desire to hold that much failure in her hands. Eleanor reviewed the report on a tablet, highlighting sections with the grim satisfaction of a gardener removing invasive roots. The findings were clear. Nathaniel had violated company access policies by sharing his secondary badge with Livia. He had failed to disclose a romantic relationship with a senior employee whose compensation and travel approvals intersected with his office. He had approved or directed expenses misclassified as strategic partnerships. He had instructed an assistant to avoid written references to Livia in certain calendar entries. He had attempted to influence Livia's account after the photos became public internally. He had threatened Vanessa in writing. He had violated board instructions by posting a public statement that could reasonably be interpreted as discouraging employee cooperation. The report did not say monster. Reports rarely use satisfying nouns. It said cause. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Vanessa spent the morning at home. She walked through rooms that had begun to feel like hers again by becoming quieter. Nathaniel's clothes were gone. His shoes no longer waited by the mudroom door. His coffee beans had been removed from the pantry because she hated the smell and had only tolerated them as a minor act of marriage. In the bedroom, sunlight fell across the pillow where she had left the ring weeks earlier. The pillowcase had been changed. The ring was in her desk now, sealed in a small envelope. Rachel arrived with lunch Vanessa did not want and ate half of it while complaining that grief made people bad at sandwiches. Are you going to watch the board meeting from here? Rachel asked. Renhold office. Do you have to speak? Maybe. Rachel studied her. Do you know what you want to say? Vanessa looked toward the window. Less than I used to. That sounds either healthy or terrifying. Both. At 1:30, Vanessa arrived at Renhold. Eleanor was already there. Margaret joined by video from Stirling Bridge. The board assembled in a closed session. Nathaniel was given an opportunity to respond to the report before being removed from the call for deliberation. He looked composed. Too composed. I accept parts of the report, he said. I dispute its tone and proportionality. I also believe the process has been influenced by my wife's family interests in ways that future courts may examine. Eleanor's pen stopped moving. There it was. The threat beneath the suit. Nathaniel continued. That said, I do not want Stirling Bridge harmed by prolonged conflict. I am prepared to step down as CEO if the board agrees to designate my departure as voluntary, preserve my founder equity, and release all personal claims connected to these events. Margaret's expression hardened. Vanessa almost felt tired enough to laugh. He was trying to sell the fire back to the house. Evelyn Grant asked, by personal claims, do you include Mrs. Cross's marital and property claims? Nathaniel's attorney answered, a global peace would benefit everyone. Vanessa unmuted. No. Every face turned. She had not planned to speak so soon. But some words rise fully formed when nonsense has worn out its welcome. My marriage is not a board asset, she said. My bracelet is not a company expense. My silence is not part of Nathaniel's severance. Stirling Bridge can decide whether he remains fit to lead. I will decide what personal claims I release, if any, through my own counsel. Nathaniel's composure cracked. You want me ruined? Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. I wanted you honest. Ruin was your backup plan. The board removed him from the call. Deliberation lasted 47 minutes. The decision was unanimous, except Colin, who did not abstain this time. Nathaniel Cross was removed as CEO for cause. Grant Mercer would remain interim CEO pending external search. Certain compensation would be clawed back. Misclassified expenses would be reimbursed. The company would refer specific findings to appropriate authorities if required by law. Renhold's protective rights would remain active during governance transition. When Margaret read the decision aloud, Vanessa felt no burst of joy. Instead, she felt something heavier leave the room. Not love. Love had left in stages. The weight was responsibility for his story. Nathaniel rejoined to hear the outcome. He sat very still, then nodded once, as if he had known all along and was allowing the board to perform its role. Sterling Bridge will regret losing me, he said. Evelyn Grant replied, Sterling Bridge regretted enabling you. The call ended. Vanessa closed her eyes. Eleanor placed a hand over hers. It is done. No, Vanessa said softly. It is decided. Done will take longer. That distinction mattered. Consequences could be delivered in a meeting. Healing. Divorce filing became public 2 days later. Not because Vanessa wanted it public. Because Nathaniel's removal had turned their marriage into a business story, and business reporters love nothing more than a marital filing attached to a fallen CEO with founder equity. Within hours, headlines formed around the same phrase, the wife who slept. Vanessa hated it. Rachel found it hilarious. It sounds like a fairy tale, Rachel said over breakfast. The wife who slept and toppled a CEO. Please stop. A princess pricks her finger on evidence preservation and awakens to governance reform. Rachel. Eleanor, reading the financial disclosure schedule, said, the fairy tale would be improved by fewer restricted stock units. The divorce itself was not simple. Nathaniel tried to argue that Renhold's protective rights were separate from marital assets when it helped him and marital influence when it hurt him. While ignoring the fact that he had damaged his earning capacity in 12 high-resolution photos. He requested confidentiality so broad it would have prevented Vanessa from describing her own life to her therapist without written carve-outs. Eleanor rejected the first settlement offer with a response so brief Vanessa read it twice for pleasure. No. The second offer was longer and worse. The third began to resemble reality. During this period, Nathaniel requested one in-person conversation. Against Eleanor's advice, Vanessa agreed, but only in a conference room with counsel nearby. He arrived wearing no tie and no performance of power. For the first time since the scandal began, he looked simply tired. I am not here to ask you to come back, he said. Good. The corner of his mouth moved. Almost a smile. It vanished. I found the first investor deck, he said. The one you rewrote. Vanessa remembered it. Blue cover. Terrible margins. Nathaniel had used the word revolution 9 times and revenue once. In the file. I was gentle. You were surgical. That too. He looked at his hands. I told myself you helped because you had nothing else to do. Vanessa felt the old wound ache, but no longer bleed. I know. That was easier than admitting I needed you. I know that too. He looked up. Do you? Nathaniel, I lived inside the result. He absorbed that with a flinch. I am sorry, he said. Vanessa waited for the second half. The explanation, the request, the subtle hook, none came. He continued, for Livia, for the bracelet, for the lounge, for the messages, for making you feel like your care was something I survived instead of something I received. Her throat tightened against her will. An apology can be too late and still find the address. Thank you, she said. He nodded. I am going to sign the revised property terms. That surprised her. All of them? Most. The lawyers can fight about the art storage fees. I am trying to retain some dignity. Despite herself, Vanessa laughed once. Nathaniel looked at her with naked sadness. I missed that. She did not answer. He understood, perhaps. Or maybe he finally understood enough not to ask. Before leaving, he said, I told myself your silence meant I could still win. Vanessa looked at him. My silence meant I was deciding whether the game was worth playing. And was it? No. He nodded and left. The settlement finalized 3 weeks later. Vanessa kept the house, her trusts, her family property, and full separation of Renhold interests. Nathaniel kept certain premarital assets, reduced founder equity subject to company clawback, and the burden of rebuilding a name without using hers as scaffolding. The bracelet was returned, cleaned, and placed in Vanessa's desk drawer beside the ring. She did not wear either. Some objects neither 14 Sterling Bridge held its first company meeting without Nathaniel in early spring. Vanessa attended from the back row. She had no official title on the operating team. She did not want one. Renhold's governance role remained active but quiet. Grant Mercer, now permanent CEO, had invited her as a representative of the trust, and, more delicately, as someone the employees deserved to see standing upright. The auditorium was full. Engineers, sales leads, compliance officers, assistants, product managers, client support, facilities staff. People who had become unwilling witnesses to a marriage collapsing through all hands. Vanessa wore a gray dress and pearl earrings. No bracelet, no ring. Grant stepped onto the stage and spoke plainly. That alone made the room feel different. Nathaniel had loved stage lighting. Grant loved agendas. We failed internally at the standards we sell externally, he said. That changes now. He announced new access controls, executive expense oversight, relationship disclosure requirements, anti-committee. He named the harm without naming Vanessa as spectacle. She appreciated that. Then Margaret Ellis took the stage. Whistleblowing is often imagined as dramatic, she said. In reality, it is usually a person choosing documentation over fear. The board thanks everyone who cooperated with the investigation. A few heads turned toward Vanessa. She kept her gaze forward. After the meeting, employees approached in cautious waves. Some thanked her. Some apologized for witnessing something private. One young analyst, the same woman who had questioned Livia's retention bonus, stood in front of Vanessa with tears in her eyes. I thought I was going to lose my job, she said. For asking about the bonus? The analyst nodded. His office made me feel like I was stupid. Vanessa knew that feeling too well. You were not stupid, she said. You were early. The analyst laughed through a tear. Later, in the lobby, Owen Price, the engineer who first saw the post, approached with awkward sincerity. I am sorry, he said. Vanessa tilted her head. For what? I screenshotted it. The photos. Before I realized legal had everything. It felt like gossip. I deleted it after. Vanessa studied him. He looked miserable. Thank you for telling me. I should not have. No, she said. You should not have. But you corrected it. Keep that instinct. He nodded, relieved and chastened. As Vanessa left the building, she paused by the wall where Sterling Bridge's founding timeline had been updated. Nathaniel's name remained, as it should. Erasing founders is another kind of lie. But the display now included funding rounds, board oversight milestones, and a section on governance reforms. For the first time, the story did not pretend one man had built the company alone. Outside, cherry trees had begun to bloom along the street. Vanessa stood beneath them while petals moved lightly in the wind. Rachel texted, How did it go? Vanessa replied, The company is learning active verbs. Rachel sent back a string of laughing messages and one heart. Vanessa put the phone away. She thought of the night she received the photos. The kitchen. The bracelet. The sentence Livia sent to make her feel into sleep. People would keep telling the story as if sleep were the shocking part. They would miss the real point. She slept because she trusted the truth to keep moving after she released it. That was not laziness. That was finally refusing to. 15. 6 months later, Vanessa moved back into the library. Not physically. She had never left the house. But for months after Nathaniel's departure, the library remained a room she passed without entering unless Eleanor required a signature. It held too many versions of them. Nathaniel rehearsing pitches by the fireplace, Vanessa editing board memos at the old desk, the two of them eating takeout on the rug after Sterling Bridge closed its first major client, the night he came home furious after the post and called accountability sabotage. Memory can turn a room into a witness stand. On the first cool morning of autumn, Vanessa opened every window, hired 2 movers to remove Nathaniel's leather chair, and replaced it with a reading chair upholstered in green velvet that he would have called impractical. Rachel arrived with flowers and no respect for emotional subtlety. This chair says rich widow in a mystery novel, she said. I am divorced, not widowed. Emotionally, the distinction is handled by lawyers. Vanessa threw a cushion at her. They spent the afternoon rearranging shelves. Business biographies moved out. Poetry moved in. Compliance manuals stayed because Vanessa had developed affection for rules that did what they promised. On the wall above the desk, she hung a photograph of her father standing beside the first Renhold office, sleeves rolled up, smiling like a man who knew money should have a spine. In the bottom drawer, Vanessa found an old envelope. Inside was the first anniversary card Nathaniel had written after Sterling Bridge survived its near collapse. I could not have built this without you. She stared at the sentence until it blurred. For years, she had wondered whether she imagined the man who wrote it. Perhaps she had not. Perhaps he existed then, briefly and imperfectly, before pride began editing his memory. That did not save the marriage. It did not excuse what came later. but it allowed Vanessa to grieve something real instead of feeling foolish for mourning a lie. She placed the card in a box labeled past, not because the word was poetic, but because clarity deserved storage. That evening, Eleanor came by with documents and wine. You redecorated, Eleanor said. I reclaimed. Better verb. They sat in the library while rain began outside. Vanessa signed 2 final documents related to the divorce settlement and 1 Renhold governance update. Then Eleanor closed her folder and looked at her over the rim of her glasses. How are you? Vanessa considered giving the easy answer. Fine. Better. Busy. Instead, she said, some days I miss being certain. Eleanor nodded. Certainty is often just ignorance with good lighting. Vanessa laughed softly. That is bleak. It is also useful. I miss who I thought we were. Of course. And then I remember he knew I swallowed things. Eleanor's face softened. Vanessa touched the desk drawer where the bracelet and ring still rested in separate envelopes. I do not want to become hard, she said. You have not. How do you know? Eleanor looked around the library. Hard people do not worry about what pain makes of them. They only worry about winning. Vanessa let that settle. Later, after Eleanor left, Vanessa opened the drawer. She took out the bracelet. The emeralds caught the lamplight, small and green as new leaves. For months, the bracelet had meant humiliation. Then evidence. Then recovery. Now, it was beginning to become itself again. She fastened it around her wrist. The metal felt cool. She did not think of Livia first. She did not think of Nathaniel first. She thought of the younger woman she had been when she received it, hopeful and exhausted, proud of a company she had helped save from behind the curtain. That woman deserved tenderness, not embarrassment. Vanessa lifted her wrist toward the light. Past, present, future, Nathaniel had said. He had been wrong about many things, but not the structure. The past had happened. The present was hers. The future finally. 1 year after the all-hands post, Sterling Bridge invited Vanessa to speak at its annual Ethics and Compliance Summit. She declined twice. Grant Mercer asked a third time, carefully, with no pressure. The topic is preservation culture, he said. Not your marriage, not the scandal, the choice to document. Vanessa almost declined again. Then she remembered the young analyst who thought she might lose her job for asking the right question. So she said yes. The summit took place in the same auditorium where Nathaniel used to deliver annual founder speeches beneath a screen showing his face larger than necessary. This year, the stage held no portrait, only a simple title. Records remember what power forgets. Vanessa approved the title and hated how accurate it was. She stood backstage while Grant introduced her. Her bracelet was on her wrist. Her wedding ring remained at home. Eleanor sat in the front row, pretending not to look proud. Rachel sat beside her with the expression of someone prepared to clap before anyone else. When Vanessa stepped on stage, the room rose. The standing ovation startled her. She almost stepped back. Then she saw the analyst from finance, Owen from engineering, Anika, the former chief of staff, invited as a consultant for the new governance program, facilities managers, HR staff, product leads, people who had spent a year rebuilding trust through boring procedures that would never trend online. Vanessa breathed. She waited until the room sat. I am not here to talk about gossip, she began. Gossip is what happens when truth has nowhere formal to go. The auditorium went very still. A year ago, I received images meant to humiliate me. I sent them to the people responsible for preserving records. Then I went to sleep. That detail became the joke, the headline, the part strangers like to repeat. But sleep was not the important part. The important part was that I stopped negotiating with behavior that needed documentation. She saw Eleanor's pen pause. Many organizations make the same mistake many families make, Vanessa continued. They treat discomfort as a greater threat than misconduct. They ask who will be embarrassed if the truth is recorded, instead of who will be harmed if it is not. No one moved. Sterling Bridge sells tools that preserve digital truth. This company learned, painfully, that tools are not culture. Culture is whether a junior analyst can question a bonus, whether a facilities manager can keep a cleaning record, whether an employee can tell the truth about an access card without being sacrificed for a founder's image. Culture is whether the quietest person in the room knows the record will protect them when volume will not. The words came easier now. Not because the pain had vanished, but because she no longer needed the room to validate it. Power often depends on making people feel alone with what they know. Documentation is one way to end that loneliness. She paused. And for anyone who needs to hear this beyond policy, if someone counts on your silence because they think you will swallow the hurt, they have misunderstood you. Silence can be fear, it can be patience, it can be strategy, but once you choose the truth, you do not have to stay awake all night guarding it. Let the record work. The room remained quiet for one heartbeat. Then applause rose, not explosive at first, but deep. People stood again. Vanessa saw Rachel crying openly. Eleanor dabbed one eye with the corner of a napkin and looked furious about it. Afterward, employees lined up to speak to Vanessa. Some told her about reporting concerns. Some said thank you. One young engineer said, "I used to think HR was where truth went to die. It is slightly less dead now." Vanessa laughed. "Put that on a poster." At the reception, Grant handed her a glass of sparkling water. "You changed the company," he said. "No," Vanessa replied. "The company changed when people stopped pretending they had not seen things." "You started it." She looked around the room. Maybe he was partly right. Starting a thing did not mean owning every result. That was another lesson Nathaniel had never learned. As she left the building, a message arrived from an unknown number. For a moment, her body tensed. Then she read it. It was from Livia. "I watched the summit stream. I am still learning. Thank you for saying truth needs somewhere formal to go." Vanessa stood outside the building beneath a clear evening sky. She typed back one sentence. "Keep learning where your choices end and another woman's dignity begins." Livia replied with no excuses. "I will." Vanessa's life became smaller, which may have been the first honest thing to happen to him. He did not go to prison. He did not vanish. The world rarely offers endings that clean. He settled certain expense issues, surrendered portions of compensation, and accepted a 3-year restriction from executive roles in companies connected to Renhold or Sterling Bridge clients. He gave one interview, poorly, then stopped giving interviews at the urging of people who still cared enough to prevent him from confusing exposure with charisma. Months passed before Vanessa saw him again. It happened in a bookstore on a Sunday afternoon. She was in the history section, holding a book about women who financed early scientific expeditions, when she turned and found Nathaniel standing at the end of the aisle with a paperback in one hand. For a second, both of them became statues. He looked different, not ruined, not reborn, just less polished. His hair was longer, his coat simpler, his expression stripped of the automatic expectation that a room would adjust around him. "Vanessa," he said. "Nathaniel." There was no security, no lawyer, no bored grid of faces. Just shelves, quiet music, and a stack of books between them. "I saw your summit speech," he said. She waited. "It was good. Thank you." He looked at the book in his hand as if surprised to find it there. "I am consulting for a nonprofit now, privacy infrastructure, smaller hospitals." That startled her. "Good. It is not impressive. That may be good too." He laughed once, softly. Not the old laugh, the one designed to fill rooms. This one barely reached her. "I deserved that." Vanessa did not say yes, though yes was present. Nathaniel continued, "I wanted to tell you something without asking for anything." The old part of her braced. He noticed. "I know. That was new too." "I read the old board memos," he said. "All the versions. Yours and mine. I saw how much you changed, how much you saved. I used to think admitting that would make me smaller." He looked at her directly. It did not. It just made the lie smaller. Vanessa felt something in her chest shift, not toward him, but away from anger. "I am glad you know," she said. "I am sorry I did not know while it could still matter." She considered that. "It matters differently now." He nodded. A customer moved into the aisle, realized the atmosphere was complicated, and immediately became fascinated by a shelf of medieval trade routes. Nathaniel stepped aside. "I will not keep you." "Take care of yourself," Vanessa said. He seemed surprised by the kindness, small as it was. "You too." They walked in opposite directions. Vanessa bought the book. Outside, autumn air moved through the street. She did not cry until she reached her car, and even then it was not the old crying. It was grief completing paperwork, a stamp on something already decided. That evening, she sat in the green chair in the library and read about women who funded ships, laboratories, translations, schools, Discoveries. Women whose names were footnotes until someone opened the right archive. Women who had not always stood on the stage, but had built the roads leading to it. Vanessa touched the bracelet on her wrist. She no longer hated the fact that she had helped build Stirling Bridge from the shadows. Chapter 18. On the second anniversary of the All Hands Post, Vanessa hosted dinner in the library. Not a gala, not a fundraiser, not a victory party. Just Rachel, Eleanor, Margaret, Anika, Grant, Owen, the young finance analyst whose name was Maya, and a few friends who knew when to bring flowers and when to bring silence. The green chair had become everyone's favorite seat, which Vanessa found funny because Nathaniel would have hated it. The shelves held poetry, governance manuals, histories, and a small framed print of Stirling Bridge's first clean audit under the new controls. Eleanor called that excessive. Vanessa called it decor. They ate at a long table near the windows while rain softened the city outside. Conversation moved from work to family to whether Rachel's latest date had used the phrase personal brand, unironically, which everyone agreed was grounds for immediate dismissal. After dessert, Maya raised a glass. To records, she said. Owen lifted his. And to not screenshotting things we should not screenshot. Everyone laughed, including Vanessa. Margaret added, to governance that does not require a scandal before functioning. Ambitious, Eleanor said. Necessary, Vanessa replied. Later, when the guests had gone and the house settled into its night sounds, Vanessa stood alone in the kitchen where everything had started. The same island, the same windows. A different woman reflected in the glass. She remembered the phone lighting up at 11:48. Livia's message. The bracelet. Nathaniel's face in the photos. The quiet click of selecting images. The sentence she typed. The decision to sleep. At the time, people thought she had been cold. She had not been cold. She had been done catching knives by the blade. There is a kind of betrayal that begs for spectacle. It wants screaming because screaming can be dismissed. It wants broken glass because broken glass distracts from broken trust. It wants the betrayed woman to become messy enough that the betrayal looks like one half of a mutual storm. Vanessa had almost given Nathaniel that storm many times. Instead, she gave him a record. That was why the next morning changed everything. Not because she exposed an affair. Affairs are old stories. Not because she was rich. Money can protect, but it cannot make a person wise. Not because the mistress confessed, or the board acted, or the company survived. Everything changed because Vanessa finally stopped translating pain into privacy for a man who used privacy as a hiding place. She turned off the kitchen light and walked into the library. The bracelet glimmered on her wrist. The ring remained in its envelope. The house no longer waited for footsteps that did not belong there. Outside, the rain eased. On her desk lay a note she had written for herself after the summit. You do not have to be loud to be heard. You only have to stop protecting the lie. Vanessa read it once, smiled, and placed it inside the top drawer. Tomorrow would bring work, calls, decisions, perhaps some new foolishness from people who believed rules were decorative. She would handle what belonged to her. She would let other people own the consequences they earned. For tonight, she slept, peacefully. And this time, no empire. Last attempt to own the story came from a podcast studio with exposed brick walls and a host who specialized in fallen founders. He did not say Vanessa's name at first. That was part of the performance. He spoke about pressure, isolation, the burden of being responsible for hundreds of employees, and the danger of private pain becoming public spectacle. He wore a dark sweater, no tie, no watch, no visible arrogance except the kind carefully disguised as humility. Vanessa did not watch live. Eleanor did, because Eleanor considered monitoring foolish men a professional discipline. At 8:12 p.m., Eleanor sent one message. He is trying. Vanessa was in the library, reading a grant proposal for a digital safety fellowship Renhold planned to fund. She put the proposal down and opened the transcript link. The host asked, do you feel the company acted too quickly? Nathaniel answered, I believe everyone was reacting to humiliation rather than facts. A private marital betrayal became a company-wide broadcast. Employees were pulled into something they should never have seen. He paused there, letting remorse paint him from the right angle. I take responsibility for my conduct, he continued, but I also think leaders need protection from internal systems being used impulsively during personal crises. Vanessa read the line twice. protection for leaders, not protection from leaders. There was the old architecture, trying to rebuild itself in public. Rachel called before Vanessa finished the transcript. Please tell me I can post something. No, just one sentence. No. What if it is devastating and legally reviewed? Still no. Eleanor called next. We should respond. Vanessa leaned back in the green chair. Privately or publicly? That depends on whether you want him to keep using the word impulsive. Vanessa looked toward the kitchen, where the night had started 2 years earlier. She had never sent the photos out of impulse. She had read the images, recognized company premises, named the relevant departments, requested preservation, and then stopped managing the fallout. He knew that. The board knew that. The employees knew that. But the public liked simpler stories. Angry wife, humiliated husband, company overreaction, a founder destroyed by a domestic mistake. Vanessa had no appetite for another personal rebuttal. She did not want to sit in a studio and describe her bracelet, her marriage, Livia, the executive lounge. She did not want pain converted into content one more time. Then she saw Maya's name in her email. The young finance analyst had forwarded the podcast clip with a short note. I know this is not my place, but it's impulsive or wrong. People here will hear that, especially junior people. Vanessa closed her eyes. That was the problem with lies. They rarely stop at the intended target. They become weather for everyone below. She called Eleanor. Not an interview, Vanessa said. Good. A statement through Renhold and Sterling Bridge. No marital details beyond established record. Focus on place misconduct does not become private just because it embarrasses an executive. Eleanor's voice warmed by one precise degree. Excellent. The statement went out the next morning. It did not insult Nathaniel. It did not mention Livia by name. It did not describe heartbreak. It simply stated that the original internal report identified possible misuse of restricted company premises, executive access, corporate resources, and personal property connected to company leadership. It affirmed that employees and reporting parties must be able to when evidence implicates powerful people. It ended with one sentence Grant Mercer insisted on adding. Sterling Bridge's current governance policy is clear. The rank of the person involved does not determine whether a concern deserves preservation. The line spread through compliance circles before gossip accounts got bored of it. By noon, the podcast host added an editor's note linking to Sterling Bridge's investigation summary. By evening, Nathaniel's clip had become a case study in founder reframing. By the next day, 3 corporate governance newsletters were discussing the difference between exposure and escalation. Vanessa said nothing more. At dinner, Rachel lifted a glass. To weather control. That sounds sinister. You are a little sinister now. In a tasteful way. Eleanor, who had joined them with takeout, said, She is not sinister. She is precise. Precision can be sinister, Rachel argued. Vanessa laughed and let them argue because their noise felt like home. Later, when she was alone, she received a message from Nathaniel. I should not have framed it that way. She stared at the sentence. No apology flourish. No demand. No hook. After a while, she replied, No, you should not have. He did not answer. Furld launched the fellowship the following spring. It was called the Quiet Record Initiative, though Rachel begged Vanessa to choose something less like a legal ghost story. The program funded training for early career employees in compliance, HR, security, and finance, especially those in organizations where power liked to call itself culture. It offered scholarships, legal education, reporting tools, and emergency advisory support for people who saw things before anyone powerful wanted them seen. The launch event was held in a modest auditorium at a university, not a hotel ballroom. Vanessa insisted on that. No chandeliers, no champagne towers, no stage large enough for a founder's ego to reproduce. Maya spoke first. She was nervous, but she stood straight at the podium and told the audience about questioning an irregular bonus, being made to feel small, and learning that records do not protect themselves unless people are brave enough to create them. She did not mention Nathaniel. She did not need to. Owen spoke next about digital evidence ethics and why screenshots can be both necessary and harmful depending on who controls them and why. He managed to be awkward, funny, and useful in under 7 minutes. Eleanor approved, which was practically a knighthood. Then Vanessa took the stage. She looked out at students, junior analysts, HR coordinators, paralegals, security staff, and a few executives wise enough to look uncomfortable. The bracelet rested on her wrist. The room was quiet in a way that felt less like judgment and more like readiness. Power often teaches people to doubt what they saw, she began. It tells them the room was not restricted, the access was not improper, the message was not a threat, the pattern was not a pattern. It tells them that if the truth embarrasses someone important, the truth must be the problem. She paused. This initiative exists because the truth needs a place to go before it becomes a scandal. Pens moved. Phones recorded. Vanessa felt no urge to perform. The words were not for sympathy. They were tools. I once believed protecting someone's image was part of loving them, she said. Then I learned that love without accountability becomes labor, and labor without respect becomes disappearance. Organizations do this too. They ask quiet people to absorb the cost of powerful people's comfort. They call it discretion. They call it loyalty. Sometimes they call it being a team player. In the front row, Eleanor's face softened. But there is another kind of loyalty, Vanessa continued. Loyalty to the people who do the work. Loyalty to the person who speaks early and risks being dismissed. Loyalty to the record. Loyalty to the future version of an organization that can survive the truth because it stopped worshiping one person's reputation. She looked down briefly, then back at the room. If you are ever the person holding evidence with shaking hands, remember this. You do not have to make a scene to make a record. You do not have to destroy a place to tell the truth about what is damaging it. And you do not have to stay awake all night carrying consequences that belong to someone else. The applause came slowly, then rose. Not wild, not viral. Better. Afterward, a young woman approached Vanessa near the side aisle. She wore a university badge and held a notebook against her chest. My manager keeps telling me not to put concerns in writing, the woman said. He says writing makes everything dramatic. Vanessa felt the old, cold clarity return, this time without pain. Writing makes everything accountable, she said. That is why he dislikes it. The woman nodded as if someone had opened a window. That moment, more than any headline, felt like an ending worthy of the beginning. That night, Vanessa returned home to the quiet kitchen. No shocking photos waited on her phone. No mistress. No CEO husband. No emergency board call forming in the dark. Only one message from Rachel. Proud of you. Also, quiet records still sounds haunted. Vanessa smiled and typed back. Good, some records should haunt people. She placed the phone on the counter and looked at the window. The reflection showed a woman in a black dress, emerald bracelet on her wrist, shoulders relaxed, eyes clear. Not untouched, not unbroken, but whole in a way that did not require anyone else's denial. The old story had started with humiliation sent to her in 12 photos. The new one began every time someone subscribed for more stories about quiet women, hidden power, and the moment betrayal meets consequence.